In the days before her wisdom bloomed, in the years before the elder had been earned, and in the months of early womanhood, the moments of being a child had passed. Vee'olennett was unlike any other, witness to the wild in conversation, the bounce between the trees. However, she was still growing and unwise to the atrocities of an evolving world fighting for survival. From the dark mountains they came, under the command of an overwhelming foghorn, beasts sculpted into monitors by the notorious Ashtasha. Ashtasha once fulfilled the elder's will, a wish that she came to regret. Hidden away within the forest that speaks, the Tens found a spot, a perfect spot. Flowing waters nearby, green lush foliage all around, the soils rich in minerals with trees and vines already harboring fruits and berries. Blessed with welcome intentions, all sorts of forest life began to visit. All types of nature welcomed into a garden vibrant with growth. Full of juices, flavor, the taste of love and nurturing was abundant throughout what grew to be a fabulous color garden. Almost all that were once called visitors are now returning on a seasonal basis, and over this time, known to many as a place called home. In the beginning, there was the introduction of Barkis and Vee'olennett's infatuation. This marked the start of a new chapter, where the birth and abandonment of piglet humanoids began to unfold. Among all the animals that visited the garden, from butterflies to elephants, there was one forest animal held above all, one she favored, one that was loved and adored. One boar pig named Barkis. Vee'olennett saw him as a perfect specimen in every way, a growing infatuation towards this standing strong, humongous beast. Wild, masculine, the boar pig Barkis was a regular visitor to the gardens for its fruits and wild berries. The first time she saw his stature, she froze in awe. With eyes wide open, slack jaw widened. With curiosity she reached out, and in retaliation, the wild beast turned, flared his nostrils, flexed his shoulders, and with a twitch of his ears, he came with a charging approach. Dust kicked up with his staunch thrust forward, throwing his weight. The pulsing muscle mass was highlighted with veins of pulsing testosterone. With a face of 2 tusks and long, sharp teeth, the sight focused only on the husky hairs and whiskers protruding from a thickened, leathery hide. Eye to eye, the boar pig stopped in his tracks. An instant connection, and from then, this relationship would never look back and only move forward. Called a beast for all his living, however, in the eyes of the boar pig, she saw something else. The brown, wide stare of a lonely beast drew her heart closer and closer together into one beat. Hours of staring turned to strengthened hearts bounded, a relationship leading to a forbidden love that blossomed and bloomed. Lust, want, need furthered the cause of infatuation, fixated with intention. This romance became a need that overcame all that once made sense. The overpowering urge begged out from her loins, a calling to make love to the beast, to mate with her love, her obsession, to become one with the boar pig, Barkis. The beauty she saw within, a compulsion that thrummed through every part of her existing soul. She must fulfill her lust, no matter the risk or how far she must go, willing to give all to whatever debt she may owe. A wish thrown out to the whispering conversations of the wild. On hot air the whisper wanders, creeping over up into the yonders. Among sounds of rage a whisper floats, gliding on the warm breeze, traveling over an army of monstrous beast, ugly foul creatures rotten to the soul. The whisper passes through the flags of war, whisking up with the ashes of the dead to a final journey to direct evil. Listening with great intent, up pricked the pointed ears of Ashtasha as the whisper of a wish entered Ashtasha's brain and read like thoughts. A wish to be granted with the consequence of everlasting dread. A wish to breed with her lover. Sounded simple enough, however, with Ashtasha, it was never simple and never was it enough. A wish fulfilled with the greed of a great dark evil. And so, the deed was done. 9 months on, 5 piglet humanoids were born. Unlike their father, they possessed humanoid features. Nor were they boar pig, nor were they human. Disgusted by these abominations, she came to a need, A want, a vicious notion, a hastily decision to quickly discard them. These tiny pig-faced trolls, runt pups. There were 5 born in total, however. The newly found mother had regret set upon her mind. A once intentional wish turned to doom, a following emotion that was felt ever since this day of shame and embarrassment. The young Vee'olennett held such heavy burdens brought upon herself after one choice was made after the other, over and over, as did the years that came to pass. These choices slowly consuming her life, her soul. In a distant future, this returning failure will come with haunting deviation, vested in destruction to all that is valued, denial in repressed memories come to unveil. The previous dribbling setting the stage and emotions for want what worse than breed with a species not your own, but to abandon those whom you have given birth to. From the growth of a tiny little speck rapidly to a living, breathing being a fragile little baby. Or babies, in this case forbidden outcomes of forbidden mating, creating 5 crossbreed piglet humanoids. However, this was once willed into existence with all might one could give, giving souls to succeed. And now pure disgust and fear lead to the abandonment of children, a discussion made from a new mother afraid, frightened, and unskilled with life experiences. This expense would be one to build upon, adding to the core values of what a person should not do, especially to those from whom you gave birth to. Then, to discard with such conviction is an insult, hurting the soul of all and any witness to burden such knowledge. However, this deed was done, and I can only be the person to scribe a description of subfactual information in pain of memories worth with a heavy heart, and anxieties these words have truth outside this dystopian world of fiction. Giving away 5 piglet chillings to the elements of the earth, a large basket, squealing. With the sounds of hungry chillings, the basket was sat between the raised roots of a large willow tree. In this mother's mind, she thought it is at least some form of barrier before they would be found. Hopefully somebody will pass, please somebody. Anybody, take them away. She whispers with the intention of a receiver, but all for conversation had come to ignore the youngling Vee'olennett. The trees and souls and the sands had grown sore in witness of her poor decisions. To her, from this moment, the forest conversations fell silent to her ears, nothing could be heard. Once vibrant, floral voices now bear ignorance in pure silence. The forest life is witness, and with heavy hearts turned its back, and will do so for many years. As a youngling grown unto an adult, having all experiences one would have in a game of give and take, developing with mental stability did not come easy, nor did it happen with grace. Each day in living survival was a strengthening practice. It would be many passing moons with many fallen seasons. An earth in many passing cycles before this elder would emerge. Time gifted the vulnerably clock of aging, evident by how long thick the silver-grey hair would grow. Gravity punished the flesh with a once youthful forsake. Slender, slim, radiant complexion all faded into the memories of others, holding a mental photograph of what she once looked like, and all that came to pass. The elder became of age. Over years wisdom was earned, and so was the title of elder. The role of elder was a role fulfilled with endless efforts to gain a love once lived and have trust of the whispering conversations of the forest, before wisdom had taken form. For now we return to the past, to a haunting event, lived in memory again and again. After giving birth alone in the forest, hearing nothing from nowhere, she is truly alone, left with the decision to abandon the piglet babies. As the basket left her hands, sliding the basket in between the roots of the tree, there is no final goodbye. There is no last glance, no visible chance to reverse. Gravity drops the basket into place. Her hands retreated quickly into the pockets of her coat, an oversized dark hooded cloak. As she turned in one motion without hesitation, stepped away, and took several large strides away from the tree, disappearing into the wild foliage of the forest, leaving the piglets chillings crying, hungry, alone. From day into the creeping darkness of fading light, they huddled in a nest together, quietly, and slept for survival in the first night. However, this is no humble story, and over the days that follow, these siblings became divided in horrendous ways. Experience loss driven by hunger, Such young minds conclude the crude ways to live, the pure need to survive, to overcome a horrendous world out to eat you. An impression of the world from a young mind abandoned and left with nothing but to live, to leave or stay. The first sibling, this little piggy humanoids, cries out with his need to eat. The second little piggy happened to agree. The third little piggy said, "Stay quiet," and shook her head and squinted her eyes to say she didn't want to leave the safety of the basket as she gripped the blue blanket tightly over her. The fourth piggy wanted to make a plan and work it out, but was too young to know what to do. The fifth piglet slept through the emotional conversations of its siblings. When finally hunger leads to the first lot out of the basket, peeking from under the store lid to a wild unknown world, retreat and regrouping happened several times before the first attempt to leave the boundaries of the basket. The first heathist held his grumbling belly on the third day, looked at the others, named Haley Shits, Dikiya, Durwood, Dillwood, looked in the eye with silence, then suddenly leapt out from the basket, flicking the lid into the near waters and tipping the basket onto its side. The remaining four slid out into the open light, retreating back to the tipped basket's shadow. Hunger overcomes fear, as the smell of berries is emanating from a vine close by. The four rush to the vine, joining their sibling heathist to gorge on the red berries hanging in abundance. Fresh, fruity, juicy deliciousness smacks, pops of bursting fruits, nectar squirts and drizzles onto the surrounding dirt below them. Laughter breaks out in pure bliss as one topples over the other, slipping through, over and on each other, wrestling in a play fight, giggling, laughing, having a moment of joy in this awesome, eatable, delicious berries fruit, rolling around in the sticky puddle of goop. Suddenly a silent halt met with a bellowing squeal of a piglet's butt being bitten by red warden ant, as not one but many begun to surround the nectars and juice. The ant ready to protect their goods from these oversized invaders, with nippers filled of burning acid, any victim would be in a world of unknown pain. Kill the invaders. Retreat from our holy red berries. Ants go to war. The siblings try to escape from the puddle of sticky nectar, realizing they're in trouble and their sibling is already hurt. Slip, slop, slugged. A slow-motion retreat as the slimy nectar covers everything and all of them. The ants draw closer. Tiny dots are ants by the thousands, advancing as the piglet's sticky, slow-moving hooves are pulled away and finally out of the goop. The siblings, now in pain and somewhat stuck together, head toward the water. Heathist whiles in pain, hopping on one leg, held up by his sibling Durwood. Dillwood already ahead afloat in the water. The others lead each other down to the water's edge, as they all begin to wash off the sticky nectar of berries juice. From nowhere expected, a large, historically hungry wolf bounces out from the shadows and steps up 3 piglets in one big gulp. As hungry as this wolf was ever, he was aware the killing and eating of any baby in any form is highly forbidden, frowned upon with punishment of death if found. He pounced around another rock, another tree, leapt up and over to out of sight. On the last leap between 2 rocks, his jaw grew weak, and 2 of 3 piglets fell into an unreachable spot. Energy wasted trying to sweep them up. Still one little squealer left just enough for a nibble, just enough to quench this pain. Please don't see me, as I will never do this again, but the little runt had a different plan, for he was no meal for any animal, plant, or man. As the wolf whipped around his tongue, either to grip or swallow this tongue one, but his tongue was unable to move. He opened his mouth to spit a piglet out. Nothing came out. Lodged in his throat with a tongue tied as a belt was a little piglet runt named Haley Shit, who held on tight as the wolf lost air, choking to his death. Falling to the dirt with his mouth wide open, a small gooey piglet came rolling out, jumping to a stand and yelling, "Fuck yeah, this is Haley Shit." Dikiya and Heathist trapped between 2 rocks, eating worms and grubs for the first few days, drinking by licking rainwater off the rock face. A praying snake became a leathered rope used to trap passing food to consume. A bird was caught for meat and feathers to lure a breeding mate for more meat and survival. A quiet voice started to whisper in the ear of Dikiya, "I see the warrior within, a leader, a voice to be heard and shatter bones." A voice from within the rocks, or was it from under the earth? Was it that bird? Was it your brother? Was it me? I'm not sure anymore, I can't breathe. Heathist stands to her side, patting her back, when then Dikia made a giant inhale. As she inhaled, her fist clenched up, her face went blue, inhaling all more than she ever could or had before. Holding the hand of her brother, she lets out an almighty belching roar, loud in vibrations. The sound resonated, shaking the rocks that kept them captive. "Keep going," Heathis states with encouragement. The vibrations start to move, and dialogue long-placed rock, some cracking, splitting the sound and tone emanating from his sibling's face. An opening emerges and becomes a glance to freedom. As she stops to breathe and lifts her head, she too sees the path to freedom opened up just ahead. In a rush step forward, the now fragile dirt ground floor below moves and quivers, and upon where they stand gives way, falling into a black abyss. No lighting other than the hole exists. The duo trapped once again feel no fear, just little disappointed. Shortly into the dark walk forward, a distant buzz of humming light was heard, clangs and chains, clanking metals. It was not an animal, but a cave-dwelling pack of traveling monstrous beasts called Orokai orcs and thick-headed trolls, sometimes in a pack of up to 3 or 4, traveling in the darkness of the underground. Food was scarce. Scarce scurries lead to battles, foraging every crack and crevice for any bugs, spiders. Yum, yum! An orc sounds with vocal delight at a newly found nest of living cockroaches and larvae. Just beyond the rocks picked clean, crouched in silence were the 3 siblings, observant, watching from the distance of safety, away from the shadow's shimmer and passing glow. However well hidden in this dark abyss, it was the stench of a mouth-watering meal the Orokai orcs came to notice. Sweetly scented with rotting fruit and dirty, thickened, salty mud, and weeks of filth that had built up and layered upon, the smell of entire bodies of flabby fresh flesh under sweet layers of nature's forest hit the passing horde of orcs right in the face. It's like a hidden madness prevailed, as they fell victim to the looming smell of forest-wrapped piglets, causing hunger to worsen, gripping their bellies with hunger pains, using their every bit of energy in search of what was the most divine, delectable smell ever to be smelt by these Orokai orcs. With squalls of desperation, "The smell I must find, and it will be mine. It must be found by me. It must be tasted. I must bite it and suck the juices and lick it clean down to the bone." A common compulsion and train of thought for the horde that spread out in a desperate search for a desperate taste of a smell so close it's right under their pig-nosed faces. The piglets were not afraid, just expressed disappointment to yet again come up against such forces set on their consumption, devouring, or total destruction. Surely to be discovered and wise enough to know this, one sibling was to hide while the other 2 echoed cries of whimpering pain with full intention to be scooped up and into a hashum bag. A plan to be kidnapped quickly unfolded, led up with the expectation brought thought us a small, weak meal, defenseless, ready to be swallowed and devoured. This is a moment we proved them wrong to think us food, and to go with it would serve us. Proving the Orokai orcs' realization of looming death came in the final moments when they faced demise, knowing they were wrong and fooled to think that the smell emanating from all around was food to be found. So wrong. And in all the ways siblings banded together, finding the means to survival and with a stroke of luck or genius find a way to defeat the enemy, decapitating even the larger of these skilled foes. Once scooped up into the bag, it was just as quick a hole was cut, and when the orc felt for his prize, it was nothing but an empty bag. Rustling around with the sack, thinking like magic they had disappeared, however, it wasn't so. One cut their way out of the sack and swung onto the belt, and with one hand slowly undone the clips and cut through the bands as the orc whisked around in wonder as to where have they gone. Whipping around in circles, Heathist swiftly and with stealth used the motion to climb up the orc's worn backpack, leaping up and over the orc's shoulder in position the signal given attack. Gripping onto the head, grappling the helmet with digging claws and anchored pig feet hooves, forcing the orc to be whipped and thrust into position as he rides the Orokai-headed helmet, like keeping a seat on a running rapid river. In the confusion, the orc yells out with his mouth open. Heathist used the opportunity to quickly shove a ball of wet, oily rags deep down into the open, gaping hole of a mouth. Surprised, the orc begins to trip, stumbling into fall backward, legs swept out by a simple leathered snakeskin cut down at his heels. The arms wail and flare out, and back waving wildly for balance. The Orikai orc still choking on the well-lodged rag deep within his throat. The orc's eyes, watering, find gaze to a light directly forward. With a blink to clear his vision, he comes to see that he's directly in line with this flame. Realizing it was pointed right into his gaping face, and just then, in that moment, a small, bright, glowing flame suddenly went ka-hoof as Haley Shit set up a perfect shot of a flaming ball of liquid. It was slung with speed and accuracy from the hands of the sibling called Haley Shits. Dikia had tied and fixed the leathered snakeskin for the orc to trip. Working together, holding for a moment to focus the flame and aim for the oily wet rags soaked in flammable, sticky, rotten fruit nectar. Once removed from their skins and collected by chance and used in lamps, the oily nectar residue was highly flammable that lit easily and went up in a fiery burst when compressed. As the orc tried to scratch and scrape at his neck, suffocating with a mouth of flames, he tries to use fingers to grip a strip and dislodge the burning rag. Just as he managed to get a grip of one small tiny strip, squeezed and gripped between his index and pointer finger, he began to pull. Kaboom! Its head exploded into pieces of raining red fluids that smelt of ashy smog and rotting fleshy nectar. One of three has colored the walls with a wild bang that was humorously unexpected. After the laughter of the surprising pop of the Urikai's brain, his body slumped to the floor with a heavy thud, the sound of sincere dead weight. The three little piglets chillings take grip to weapons in hand, jump into a turn, ready to face the next battle of the remaining troll and the other Orikai beast. However, the space they once stood in witness is now vacant. Only a trail of dusty footprints was left in their wake in an abrupt effort to leave, abandoning their horde mate to a choking death with no defense from those called comrades, beastly mate.